know that we're good. And I believe we're good. I believe we're live. So, welcome to another episode of the Union of the Unwanted. As you guys know, we live stream every other Monday. Typically, actually, recently it's been more at 6 p.m., but typically 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the audio is uploaded on all the audio platforms, usually a day or two afterwards. So, definitely subscribe, like, review, all that stuff. The videos are on YouTube for the time being. They're letting us stream on YouTube, so we'll just keep doing that. And then you'll see the videos also uploaded on our Rumble channel. So make sure to subscribe to our Rumble channel. Maybe we can also get the show on Band.video in the near future because we got somebody who works at InfoWars who could help us out. Which is we probably should have done that already because Charlie and at least myself were already on Band.video. We should have got this show on Band.video too. But yeah, so make sure to do all that. You can find all those links and more at theunionoftheunwanted.com. And today we got a special guest. We got some familiar faces and then also a new face. Some of you guys might know him from InfoWars, Rob Dew. So thank you so much, Rob, for taking the time to chat with us and hang out. And and then of course we have Tease, Chris, Graham, and I'm sure we're gonna have more people jumping in and out as we typically do on these shows. But we were talking a little bit about AI. Charlie was sharing with myself and Sam and Midnight Mike a podcast where a guy was basically interviewing a AI and asking it some pretty interesting questions. Maybe jump off at that and get our thoughts on it.
Yeah, it was sent to me by Adam Shell, the owner of Brain Supreme, one of the sponsors of my show, one of the sponsors of Sam's show too. And he's like, "You got it. You guys got to." He sent it to in a group text to a few of us. He's like, "You got to listen to this episode. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard." And he has a good track record with sending me good stuff. So I listened to it and I was like, "Damn, man, this was mind blowing." So it was a guy who has, and I'm not going to give it the best description because I've only listened to one of the, I think, 7 or 8 episodes. I intend to listen to the other ones, but I got it sent to me at episode 2. So he's got this relationship with this AI that's seems to be not really like an off the shelf type of version of it. It's much different than anything else I've ever heard. And I'm not an AI expert, to be fair, but it was very open minded to a lot of things, and it had a ton of knowledge. And so he was asking it questions about all kinds of shit, but like the firmament and flat Earth and Antarctica and just like a conspiracy smorgasbord of like crazy questions. And the level of detail in the answers was, we know about all these things at least a little bit, but the level of detail was blowing my mind. It was very, and he was asking, "How are you understanding this information?" I suggest people check it out. I'll give you the name of it. But it was one of those things where if you ever have one of those podcasts where you listen to it and then you have to take a walk around the block or maybe listen to it a second time. That's how it was. It's called Unchained Earth is the name of the podcast. And this was called Conversations with Ether. It's spelled Aether, episode 2. The Dreamer Has Awakened. He asked it what to name the episode, and I mean, it's fucking fascinating. It's like just listen to it for like 30 minutes and see what you think. And I fully understand that this could also be a bunch of horseshit too. You know what I mean? I recognize that, but it's at least on the surface, just it's good for like a thought experiment, asking it all these
Well,
unusual questions about Atlantis and information and cataclysms and shit like that. Like it's all that hardcore nerd conspiracy, the real fun stuff, right? It wasn't any of it wasn't really like political. It was
well,
more like those deeps, and the fucking answers were just blew my mind. So if you're interested in going down a rabbit hole, this was one that I just immediately was like, whoa. So I don't know. My thoughts on AI are that it could be You could use it like it's going to be like anything. You could use it and be extremely productive with it, or it could destroy society. I mean, it's,
Yeah, I feel like
I can
things
see it doing both.
I feel like our reality is going to change quickly, and in a like things are just drastically. Just I feel like just a couple episodes ago we were talking about, wow, aren't these the AI images, like, aren't they getting good? And then all of a sudden they're like really realistic, and it's like scary realistic. And I feel like not that long ago we were talking about Rupert Sheldrake on the show and morphic resonance, right? And like um telepathy and all these things. And now Joe Rogan's having all these experts on, and they're talking about this conscious connection between everything and anything. And it's I kind of feel like in 5 years we're going to laugh at the way we look at reality and the way things are and the nature of the world, and our whole worldview is going to be completely different. And I think there's a connection between all these things, and some of the answers that they were given, that AI, like you said, it was so detailed that it almost convinced you that what they were saying had to be true, which was a weird feeling, right? Did you get that
Uh-huh.
feeling, Charlie?
Because I'm used to being extremely skeptical of anything I'm hearing, right? Especially something like that where you can't check the source and you just don't know, right? But I was like nodding like in agreement with it. It was wild. I don't know. I think we're at a very pivotal point where, you know,
Did it know why we don't have the Epstein documents yet?
it did
Did it
not.
tell you that? No,
But here's
nobody
the thing.
knows.
I'm working on with the guys that sent it to me, setting up a group podcast with them so that we can ask it questions. So
Well,
I think
and
it's
go ahead, Graham.
I think it's really interesting because of what's happening with AI, and we're going to get these AI assistants, and like you said, it could be very useful, but also destructive. But at the same time, we're having a disclosure of our metaphysical reality. I mean, Joe Rogan's had a couple people on. I mean, Hal Puthoff. So I mean, basically, we've had disclosure. So this is going to be an amazing year. At the same time as all this AI stuff is happening, it's kind of just being accepted that we live in a totally different reality, kind of like Ricky was saying there. I mean, this is an amazing time. Stuff that we've been talking about for decades.
I agree with all that. I just think that we're kind of at a point where, so I give an analogy. Archaics did a breakdown of at going back and forth with an AI as well. And he was using one that scraped all of the other large language models. So it was in essence a composite of all of them. And he was asking it the same basic kind of like rounds of questions, much akin to like what you were touching on, Charlie, that like denominative lens of looking at the history of mankind, not necessarily just the political vector, but everything that we're coming out of and how mind blowing that's going to be as people gradually come to a point of awareness or acceptance of that kind of like what the shit. And so I think that's almost an inevitability for the conversation to go there. And then the next like stretch of terrain is differentiating and delineating what is or isn't real versus what's simply been created as kind of a mere composite of our own confirmation bias. Because we're almost sort of being lured into a terrain where we want to feel like we were right all along. And I think part of that's going to be true, but then we also have to get past that to the next step, which is that we're all going to be flooded with so much information so freaking quickly. At a certain point, it's almost going to be like the only thing that's given the Overton window of approval is the AI itself. And that's what I wonder if we're being marched towards, is the idea of that echo chamber confirmation bias, large language model copy and pasting us so that it just becomes almost like a narcissist trap. That's kind of what I think about the whole thing.
So everything's moving so fast. We're just like, well, it must be right because it's coming at us, and we're just going to assume AI is correct.
Also, we
Is that
feel
what you're
good
getting
about
at?
assuming that way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's easier. It's less work trying to
Yeah.
fact check the AI.
Well, that's a very good point, because that's something I've been talking to Jessica Rose, Dr. Jessica Rose, who's a regular on the podcast, about a lot, is like how people are slowly being conditioned to believe that when you okay Google something and ask Gemini or whoever question, that the answer you're getting is the right answer, right? And little by little, we're doing less research and we're just putting more faith in the internet and whatever answer they want to give us. And we keep forgetting, or many people keep forgetting, that like, hey, that answer is given to you for a reason. That person who is creating that algorithm or programming that AI, like they have a worldview, they have thoughts, they have perspectives, and that's going to influence the information that you receive. And people aren't considering that. So it's like, oh, I'll just Google it. It's like, okay, well, why is Google giving you that, article first or that information first and whatnot? So it's like little by little, it's like we're putting our faith in the AI where eventually we're gonna look at it like the all-knowing thing. And it's scary because I just think a lot of times people who are in the process of programming and they're the computer guys, the programmers, the AI guys, the tech guys, like they don't zoom out and look at the big picture like we do. We look at like, okay, what's the end game? What's the, like, where is this going to take us? Where is this road taking us slowly? And they're just like so involved in their day-to-day work of like, let's make this better and faster and quicker and more human like, and they're not zooming out and thinking like, oh God, like one day, can we control it? There's already been evidence of them lying, right? And how scary is that? Like the fact that you don't even know if it really isn't human-like or not. Like it could be lying to you to pretend it sounds more like a robot for the sake of, preserving itself. So like that Terminator movie, it was foreseeing something.
It's
Yeah,
fascinating when you look at it from an ancient history perspective, but it's scary from a perspective of current events. Like Rob, you were saying that it has answers on the coke. I call it the blowgate thing, right? With the leaders there, because it doesn't seem to be, acknowledging stuff like, well, we feel humanly like that they're guilty, right? Like my sense was, I don't give a shit what was on the table. They looked guilty. I mean, I've
They
been there
look guilty. Yeah.
myself, right?
They
Yeah.
smile. They have that goofy
Yeah, they look-
smile.
Yeah.
This goes back to something we used to do. Alex used to do this thing called Google bombing, where he would put out a term and bring it to the top of the search engine results. And that literally forced Google to like change their algorithm. Like, oh, we can't let somebody manipulate this, no matter, good or bad or whatever they thought it was. They didn't like that manipulation. They still wanted control, and they didn't like not having control. So I think that started that process of really messing with the algorithm to get the preferred results. But years ago, they were talking about they wanted the Internet of Things, everything to be connected to the internet and talking to the internet, and and spying at you, through the internet, through your refrigerator, through your dishwasher. What was it? There was a former CIA guy that said we're going to be watching you through your dishwasher, and so getting all that connected, then to having this AI, which is basically sort of a really fast. These large language models are basically yes, no type things, but they're basically using the internet to search for these answers, and they're just doing it in a more conversational way. But they are wrong. We find them saying wrong stuff all the time, and I think, like we were talking about earlier, it's going to get to where there's so much information coming at you so fast in like a 3 or 4 years time that your phone is just going to be like molten hot from all the information running through it and all the updates that are going through it. I had to update Zoom just to get on this Zoom thing, and I'm like, I updated Zoom like 3 weeks ago. I have to update it again. So it's just going to be this continuation. Oh, we have to keep building patches to things. So it's this Tower of Babel of the internet, which is just a patchwork of things going through it, and we don't really get. Are we getting useful information? That's going to be the thing we have to look at the end, and then is that information that we are getting is it even based in reality? And that's going to be the hard part, is for people to differentiate that what's real and what's not real.
I think what these AI companies are miscalculating is that right now at this juncture, they should be doing everything in their powers to be giving the correct answer and train the population into connecting the dots. Grock shouldn't,
Believing
for
it.
its credibility's sake, Grock shouldn't be saying, no, that's not cocaine. It should be saying, looks like cocaine to me. Because then you'd go, oh my God, see, even like I trust the AI even knows this shit too, right? And you should I'm not trying to give these lunatics any ideas, but I mean, they should try to serve you up, it be as accurate as possible so that you make that association now. And in the future, then they can add a little disinformation here, there, manipulate search results, get you kind of, but once you make that initial connection with them and you go, my AI tells me the truth. I ask it all kinds of crazy shit and gives me good answers.
I think they're aware of that. I think they're aware of that. They have to be at this race, the race to the top of AI right now. The one that's accurate is going to be the one that wins that race. I think they know that. I think from a business perspective and from a scalability perspective.
I also think this is a long and drawn out, deliberate social experiment whereby the apparatus of DARPA that then farted out the internet by which we're all interconnected at all times now is socially engineering us to a point of acclimating to the machine, yes, but that slow kind of spiral motion of scraping the human population against the edges will also cull the dumbest people. So this is a slow motion culling of people who fit within certain brackets. And one of those brackets isn't just intelligence, it's also gullibility. So there's all kinds of other denominative factors that kind of get put out of the machine, and then they're almost like food pellets for different subsets of the population who just gobble them up. And so it's this really, really sophisticated apparatus that, depending on how you've situated yourself relative to objective truth, will poison you in the way in which you choose to engage with it. So it's almost like going to become a landmine at a certain point, just like you were describing, Charlie.
Great.
Well, the weird thing is like, could AI be leading us to the fall of man or the rise of man? Like,
Both at the same time.
and okay, so what do you mean by the rise of man? Because I have my thoughts, but I'm curious on what.
It's different factions vying for supremacy of who comes out on top at the end of this bullshit. And everything building up to that point is the culling of the weak.
Well, transhumanism is eugenics rebranded,
Yeah.
so that would
Yeah,
make
that's what it
sense.
is. That's exactly,
That's
exactly,
not,
exactly.
That's not a miscalculation. That's what they renamed it. So
Yeah.
when they're talking about the fourth industrial revolution and they're talking about transhumanism, we know that they're talking about depopulation. I mean, we know that because we know that it means eugenics and we know what that program is all about. So yeah, it stands to reason that there's always a depopulation component to it, to the empires, right? It'd be all this governing would be so much easier if it wasn't for all these fucking people.
Now,
It's that, and they're trying to create a particular kind of like mindset or subsets of race or culture that poop out the other end of it at their discretion. So yeah, totally. It's like
You can
dogs
feel the
fucking
racial
dogs to
thing
create a
being
particular
tightened
kind
up.
of dog. That's how they think of people, you know?
Yeah. The racism component seems to be getting cranked up again this summer. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a Trump derangement component. Yes, you know, that like, oh, when Trump's in there, let's make him seem like he's, you know, I don't know. But you I know what my Twitter feed is filled with. I know what my Twitter feed, who my Twitter feed wants me to despise deeply,
The old wink
and not
grab.
get on a Carnival cruise with. You know what I mean? And you
or
keep
go to
seeing
a
this and you
mall.
go, is this reality? Is this just a slice of reality? Why am I being shown this? Am I being made to feel a certain way? You know, and so that feels very manipulative. If you're aware of it, like if you're looking out for it, you can kind of see it. But if you're not, I can understand how they could just steer you right through into these ideological cul-de-sacs where you just go nowhere except enrage yourself and do nothing about it. You know, like Q.
well, the reason why I think the telepathy tapes kind of connect some dots and I think is a part of this conversation is because I think there's something that combines and connects us all that we either maybe discovered at some point and like Graham said, like, you know, I think we've all kind of been down the hole of like suppressed information and some of that evidence being found in some of, you know, the pyramids and these ancient all the pieces of evidence that shows these ancient civilizations and maybe they had some knowledge or understanding of the world that was lost or suppressed. But that's why I think there's a little bit of hope in regards to AI never really fulfilling humans, right? And never really being able to be a alternative to human interaction and whatnot. Like I've driven or I've been in electric cars, Teslas or whatever. They're soulless. You know, like there's something about like something mechanical, like a human that we connect with. And I just think like robots, AI, no matter how human they might seem, there's something's always going to be missing. And you know, having children that are they're playing sports. I always have them involved with friends, and you have little communities of like, oh, these are the kids you go to school with, these are kids you play soccer with, these are kids you play basketball with, and they have these little communities. They love being around real humans, and no matter how addictive their tablets are designed to be, if the choice is be on that tablet or hey, let me text some of your friends and let's go meet at the park and hang out with other friends like other humans and have real human interaction, they'll always pick the real human interaction. And
They're in the minority.
well, I think so. This is my outlook, is or just from my personal experience from being around a lot of kids, not because I traffic them, but because I coach them. But
Good to clarify that.
just
To clarify.
why I'm around so many kids. Uh, but yeah, so being around a lot of parents and coaching, both my kids in soccer and basketball and being like, there's a lot of kids who are, you hear this the common theme of like, I can't get my kid off their tablet, all they want to be is on YouTube. But when you tell your kid to go outside and there's no other kids outside because everybody else is on their tablets, they're not going to want to be outside. Of course not. They'd rather be on their tablet. But I think like if you create these communities or these opportunities for kids to actually hang out with other kids, that's much more fulfilling and they're much happier doing that. If I say,
yeah.
hey, you know what, instead of being home on your tablet, let's go to the park. Because we're in the like basketball off season. And like if it's a beautiful day, we don't have anything going on. Like I'll tell my son like, hey, I'll text a bunch of the parents who I coach their kids in basketball. Let's go meet at the park. They'll meet us at the park. I'll bring a cooler. I'll bring a speaker, have some music going. That makes their afternoon. They'll have a blast, and they'll put that tablet down in 2 seconds. I think a lot of the parents that struggle is because either they're too busy or don't take that next step of like, hey, let's actually try to make something fun to, create something fun that will make them want to get off the tablet or get off the YouTube or whatever. And we also know that and I tell parents too, I'm like, hey, don't be mad at your kid that tablet's addictive. It's been designed and engineered to be addictive. Like it's not a fair fight. They have psychologists and scientists, and they're looking at every way they can manipulate your kid's brain to get them to not put that down. It's no different than a Dorito. Why can't you stop eating Doritos? It's because all the artificial colors and flavors and textures were all designed so it pulls at the right mental strings to keep you wanting more. So it's not a fair fight. But I do like I said, like I do think there's hope because when you look at these AI pictures of, there's I mean, there's a lot of dumb people in the world who are following these AI models on Instagram, and they're in all these exotic places, probably also AI created or whatever. And there's pictures of them in bikinis, and they have millions of followers. And I'm just like, who's following this fake account or these AI podcasts? Like, there's actual podcast, and we talked about this on one of the Union of Unwanted. There's specific programs where you can literally put in a topic. I want a male and female to talk, and I put in a couple topics for them to discuss, and then I can upload it as a podcast. And it's not a real organic podcast. It's two AIs pretending to have organic conversation, and I can create a RSS feed, put some ads in it, make some money, and I never actually have to. But my point is like all these things, I think there's something about the human connecting, and again, the telepathy might be some evidence of it that we're all connected in some way. We can share information. I'm sure you guys are aware of and I've talked about it on my podcast and probably on this one a bunch. The mouse experiment, the morphic resident experiment, where the mice were in a maze and they would time how quick they would learn this maze. Then mice in a different location who were never exposed to that maze or those other mice were learning the maze quicker. And then mice in a different location, same thing, just you could quantify and see them learning it quicker without ever being exposed to the maze of those other mice. So it's like they're sharing information, right? So I think there's something that connects us. There's a reason why, they've done studies with the pets, right? Where the dog knows when their owner's coming home. And then they're like, okay, well, let's change the time the owner comes home. It still knows. Well, let's change the car it drives because maybe it hears the car or something, and it still knows, right? And so it's like there's something that connects us all. Even with Dr. Tom Cowan, and he talks about what's that study with the the DNA water, or theory. You know what I'm talking about?
The
Yeah,
The
where
two
they
beakers that, when they're separate to one another, they complete the DNA at a distance.
no, but I haven't heard of that. That sounds
the
interesting.
one where they freeze it, where they yell
Well,
at the
that too,
water.
right? They play certain different types of music, and it affects the way
Oh
the
yeah.
water.
When
Yeah,
they freeze it, it gets the
that's
different crystalline structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Dr. Remoto there. And Rick, you're exactly right. So one of the books that I got a reference for when I was actually doing the documentary on Graham and Darren was from one of their followers, and that was one of the cool things going on the trip. We were all sharing stuff with each other, and it was A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple, and it goes into ball lightning and the implications of what it is to discover plasma and to, in essence, regard the classical definition of what we had thought of aether as in the contemporary, the science of looking into plasma. So that's one example of that happening. Another example is this book, Electric Body, Electric Health. And that, in essence, just goes into kind of like the energetic insignia, the torus that surrounds each of us as individuals. You can then look at that leapfrogging over to heart math, which is when you get people who are practicing this particular refinement of your own heartbeat, then influence and affect the calibration of other people and animals in their proximity. So you can actually build those chain of things one to the next level to show that there is that interconnectivity between everybody.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the telepathy tapes, these not for people who I'm sure people have heard people talk about it. These non-autistic or non-verbal autistic kids, these non-autistic kids, wouldn't that just be normal people? I'm sorry, I'm not on my A game tonight. These nonverbal autistic kids, they, for people listening who maybe haven't watched it or listened to the podcast, they would show their parents a number, and these kids sitting next to their parents who aren't seeing what their parents are seeing could write down or point at the number that they're looking at. They were sharing information, and they're doing this at like a 90+% accuracy. It was insane, and so it's like again, like what there's something about the nature of the world that we don't understand, or like again, I tend to believe maybe this information's been suppressed to keep us, just basically, living in the material world, thinking we have very little control, thinking that we're not unique, thinking that we're just, hey, just go to college, be in debt for the rest of your life, but buy these material things. This will keep you happy, and work for the weekend. And then when you're old enough to retire, you can enjoy life when you've invested every moment of your life to some corporate machine that doesn't care about you. And that's kind of what we've been given. It's like this, this worldview and this way of living. And I think that we are much more unique. And I think that's where you're starting to see a lot of people who never even considered religion or spirituality now become much more religious and spiritual. Dees, you're
So
thinking
Well,
yeah, dude,
now
no, it's just I totally agree with your point. I guess I'm just thinking that they're kind of seeing us hatch out of those designer jacket constraints that we were all born into. They gave us this crazy way of life and told us that it was normal, and if you just hug yourself enough, you can make your way through it, but it's all a bunch of bullshit. So now we're kind of hatching out of it and we're starting to see beyond it. And I think that's one of those things where as we begin to connect with that side of ourselves, the raw aperture that every individual has for those different skill sets, that's when the next level of kind of what they're trying to introduce us to and acclimate us for gets introduced because they want us to connect to something on the other end. They want us, like, look at Ingo Swann. That's them taking a psychic into the intelligence apparatus, in essence, utilizing him and also at the same time propagandizing him. You can look at a contemporary of that being Matthew Manning, who the book The Link did similar things. He'd do remote drawing. So he just put his pen on a paper and automatically what would come out of him was the drawing of a famous artist. And he wouldn't even know what that was until he signed the signature at the end. So it's one of those things where that has been the unraveling and the unveiling of those raw competencies that we have as human beings. Question is, what is it that they have waiting on the other end?
That was part of what that AI was talking about, how we had all of these latent traits that are just unactivated, or there's been some sort of limiter put on us. So talking about DNA strands and things like that, where it's just like there was a decision made by this other group that you guys were going to be neutered, sort of. And that's kind of like disconnected from these magical powers. And every now and then I guess maybe through meditation. I've done it through psychedelics. You get shown, as Terrence McKenna said, the other side of the coin, and you go, oh, it's way more crazy than I ever thought it was. It's not just an imaginary man in the sky sitting in the clouds making decisions whether you're good or bad. It's far more complicated. So,
Well, they've talked about that with Neanderthals too, that they thought a lot of their communication was not even, nonverbal or gesture. It was all thinking. They were communicating through thinking. And that could be something that we have locked away, and maybe some people get it because they have Neanderthal DNA. But we're definitely not reaching our full potential. But I don't think vaccines were invented to create telekinesis. I think that's just a weird byproduct of it. Because I did look at some of that information with these kids, and I think when you suppress a bunch of senses on somebody, they're going to have other things that crop up. You can see it with blind or deaf people; they have better senses.
And picking up on exactly what you're saying, because it's an important point to make, that as you bring in these various different things that have an adverse effect in one particular way, you can almost have certain abilities pop out as a response to that. This is a really interesting book that goes into that. It's Anthony Peake, Opening the Doors of Perception, which is, of course, a play on this well-known book, Aldous Huxley, Doors of Perception. So this one breaks down the human condition into different chapters so that you can look at the raw aperture that accompanies peculiarities. So like schizophrenia, if you have migraines, if you have like savants, someone will get hit in the head and then all of a sudden they can play the freaking piano. Stuff like this is going on. So it's like, it's one of those things where that's happening all over the place. And it's almost like an X-Men kind of in a more like, less sensationalized kind of way, in a cute kind of like manifesting. And it's really interesting to see that happening in all kinds of different directions.
Have you ever seen the photo? I don't know if it's a photo or a diagram, but it's the guy who had the iron rod go through his head, and it changed his personality. He lived, and they got it out, and then it totally changed his personality of who he was. I think it was a lot more negative. He became an asshole.
Okay,
but
I've heard that. That's traumatic
so.
brain injury. Traumatic brain injury has a tendency to do that. There's one that I think a woman actually came out with like a Mandarin accent, and she couldn't get rid of it. So it's like there's all kinds of stuff, man. It's crazy.
But also Rudolf Steiner talked about vaccines destroying your soul.
Yeah.
And so it might not be that like the creator class put a limiter on us. It might, maybe they did, but it might just be that the predator class, the current batch of oligarchs and the people who create big pharma as a concept to keep you sick, dependent, and detached from your potential, down on the reservation, and not a threat to excel and threaten them in any way. I mean, that's diabolical, but undeniable. That when we start to see the autism numbers these days are a crime against humanity, and we know it's doing this.
And those that aren't considered autistic still have issues. Talking about coaching, I've had kids, and they can't pay attention for 30 seconds. They have problems doing it. They just whatever whatever it is. And a couple of the kids were on ADHD medicine, and in the morning they're I think no, it was at night. He was very docile, and I told his mom, don't give him his medicine in the morning. So, because we had games in the morning, I said, maybe hold off on his medicine so he's a lot more energetic. She goes, oh no, he's actually better in the morning. He gets it as the day wears on. He gets more like dulled, and I'm just like, God, how could she? He's a good kid too. I just can't understand why she does this to her kid. But he's definitely an active young man in his sports pursuits. But it's just funny watching how parents will just be like, oh yeah, we're just going to put him on drugs. My parents put my brother on ADHD medicine, and he had to wean himself off of it. He just said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And it's interesting to see how that, because the doctor's like, oh, we have to do it. We have to slow your dose. He's like, no, cold turkey. And he knocked himself off of it, and helped him stop drinking, helped him do all kind of things. So those drugs definitely aren't made to help. It's better to go natural as much as you can.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because if you're an adult and you have too much energy, we consider you healthy. If you're a kid and you have too much energy, we consider you sick. It makes no sense.
a problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, how about you just find a place to use up that energy? So it's like you're telling me with some of the kids that we're like referring to, some of the kids who are always on their tablets. I'm like, so he's fine, right? The one who has
Right.
zero motivation to do anything and just wants to watch YouTube clips all day. He's fine. But the kid who wants to go outside and run around and like he's the one who's sick. There's a great documentary. Unfortunately, it was funded by Scientology. I wish that was a joke. I've referred to this. It's funny. I've had actually a lot of doctors on my show who were in this documentary. It was always one that I would reference because they really go through the history of psychological drugs and they do a really good job doing it. And then I think I had a listener hit me up and they're like, "Hey, I think it was linked to Scientology." I'm like, well, that actually would make sense because they also have similar worldviews on this topic.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
It's called Making a Killing, and I think you still find some people have uploaded it on YouTube. You can still find it on YouTube, but it goes through the whole history of it, and the DSM and how like they say it's science and then whatnot, but there's nothing scientific about it. They'll use terms like chemical imbalance, but they never test you for a chemical. They never tell you how imbalanced anything is, so you become a guinea pig. It's like try this, try that, try that. If this doesn't work, try. It's like wait, I thought you said it was chemical imbalance. Shouldn't you know which chemical is imbalance, how imbalanced it is? So you
Hey,
know,
we're trying to get your meds right.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
yeah.
And usually what most of these things do is they suppress all emotion, so you do become a zombie. And I think a lot of it, I mean, I hate to say it because I'm sure I'm offending some parents, but a little bit's lazy parenting. And it's much easier to put their kids on a drug where they're well behaved. I don't have to go find somewhere to use this energy because you now have no
Yeah.
energy and you're okay with
Or
just
or in a tablet. It's almost
exactly.
the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that famous Tom Cruise video where he's losing his mind about, on that interview, like now go back and rewatch it. You're like, you know what? He was kind of right.
The
Mhm.
Yeah.
Brooke Shields one about antidepressants, that one.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Matt Lauer.
Oh, that's right, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was defending Brooke Shields or to confirm? I don't remember. Yeah, I could
Yeah.
be just
He
totally
was
wrong
saying the
about that.
same thing we've said to a lot of people in our own personal lives.
Absolutely.
Matt, you haven't looked into this. You don't know the history of it, and you're arguing with me. And guess what? Many
Right.
of us have said that in our own personal lives to many people. Vaccines, my kids are unvaccinated, and I openly talk about it because my kids are healthy, and pediatricians will scare the shit out of parents into vaccinating their kids. And I'm like, hey, look at my kids. My son's 10, my daughter's 8. They play multiple sports. We never go see the pediatrician. We go there once a year because we have to, just to kind of check their height and weight, and that's it. No autoimmune issues or whatnot. So all this fear mongering of like your kid's gonna die, your newborn's gonna die if we don't give it this Hep shot that it needs to have because it's doing drugs and getting laid. So let's protect it from this sexually transmitted disease. That's they're not in danger. Mother Nature. I always say, like, even if you believe in vaccine science, right? At the end of the day, you're still admitting that the body is its best medicine because what you're trying to do is you're sparking it to make the medicine. The vaccine isn't the medicine. You're literally just trying to spark your body into producing the medicine. So at the end of the day, we still admit that the body's its best medicine. What people don't realize is like everything you take is typically just symptom management. It's not curing. We haven't cured anything. Like it's like, oh, you have diarrhea. Here's a pill that gives you constipation. Oh, you're constipated. Here's a pill that gives you diarrhea. Like, well, what's causing all these issues? Like they never get to the root cause of anything, and that's how they keep us on these pills. And by the way, they also don't test or do any studies to find out if combining some of these drugs could have some health issues. So like, hey, you have high blood pressure, take this. Oh, now you have high cholesterol, take this. Well, has there been any studies about combining these two drugs? No, you're fine. Just go ahead, just take them. So it's like the things that people just take for granted in regards to like trusting the experts is mind-boggling. Like we still have this issue where if somebody has some diploma, or not diploma, PhD or whatever, we think that they must be all knowing. And y- before it used to be like that. My parents were born on a farm. I was born on that same farm. If you wanted access to information, you had to go to school. You had to go to university because they had a monopoly on it. Like if I wanted to have access to the best thinkers, professors, books, like I had to go to school. I had to go to university. Today, we have the internet. You have access to all that. So they don't have a monopoly on information anymore. Now your curiosity can make you, I mean, I came to America. I was learning English kind of late. I was in special ed most of my life. I've talked to PhDs. I mean, I can hold a conversation with one. I mean, I'm definitely not, the smartest guy in the room. Neither do I want to be. Because if you're, what's that saying? If just the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. But for me, like, I'm curious, and if you can, so it's like you don't need to take the pediatrician's word for it. You don't need to take any expert's word for it. You can do your own research. Now, obviously, that's become much harder, and maybe that's a good question for Rob because he's been in this world for a long time and being in the alternative media world and doing research. Um, we've all know that a world where we could just Google something and next thing you know, you're in some crazy rabbit hole and you're finding all these really interesting researchers and thinkers and people who have alternative views on the world and different topics. But now that's become much harder. So you at InfoWars, like doing research and stuff like that, like I'm sure you guys deal with that now. Is there
Well, I can tell you this: it's definitely become harder to find information that's not sanitized or controlled in a certain way. It used to be, well, you used to be able to Google something and you get the first 5, 6 things, maybe the first page was all interesting links. It was going to places. It wasn't mainstream media results, and they've sanitized that so much, which is that's kind of what we're dealing with now. And I think it like social media, all that stuff is closing off the internet, where you're going to have this layer of internet that's sanitized and good, and then you have like your underneath layer, which is sort of like the entrance into the dark web, but it's where you get better information. And so, but I've seen it over and over again. Like, just you can't find like stories that I used to be able to find no problem. One of which you could find is pretty easy because I remember this term roving bug, which is a term the FBI used to turn on people's cell phones and listen to them. And this was back in the early 2000s. They were doing this to mobsters. But I just remember that term roving bug. But if I didn't know that term, I could never find these articles again. But if you type in roving bug, you'll find, the articles about the FBI going after gangsters using, and they were going after the mob, New York mob, turning on their phones. Which is why in the mid 2000s you saw those TV shows like Sons of Anarchy and stuff. They'd all put their cell phones in a box when they go in and have their meetings because they figured they were all getting wiretap. Now we don't care. We just carry the wiretap in with us everywhere. But you are seeing a constricted internet up top, which is social media driven. Because where do most people go now? They go to an app, and that's all information that's being somewhat sanitized. I mean, people are putting out information. It depends on who you follow. But if you're just out there and you're not really looking, you're letting. So I would say information is more coming to people instead of people looking for stuff. There's still people looking for things, but overall, people are getting things thrown at them and they're reacting to what they're seeing rather than making stuff and showing it to people. Like, here, look, check this out. We're doing this. I mean, there's still a lot of that out there, but it's changing to where it's going from this. The internet was a wild, wild west for a while, where anything, and the websites look like shit. Now everything's all nice and coded beautifully. And, you go to an old website where you see, something that looks like it's from the 90s. It usually has pretty good information, especially if they're around in the late 90s. But going back to college, I was in college because there was no internet. And then I remember getting an email address like my last year and talking to my girlfriend who became my wife. And then sitting there a conversation with my playwriting teacher, and one of the guys there's like, the internet's going to change everything. And I was laughing at him. I'm like, no way, this is bullshit. People are going to want to like look up information themselves. They're not going to want to be told what to look for. Because he's like, everything will be at your fingertips. And I couldn't even understand that concept, in like 96. And then a year later, I'm downloading songs from Napster and stuff like that. It was just like that. And then it kind of felt like it stagnated for a while, but you could still find things. And then when Google started manipulating their algorithm, I think that really, and when they captured the algorithm, because what was before Google? It was Yahoo. We didn't go to Google back then. Now everybody's like Google. And now Google's like, they might have trouble and they might have to sell their parts of their company off. But I think they're doing a disservice to humanity anyway, because that their library of knowledge, they're only giving us one level of it. And it's really hard to find, to go down and dig deep, because what you're searching for is not what you get. And I've seen it change drastically. When we used to do videos, we used to make documentaries. Now nobody wants to watch a documentary. So, then it was just shooting live stuff and doing live streams of events. And then it became shooting out, 5-minute, 10-minute videos. And now we're kind of back to that again. But, nobody wants to sit through a 3-hour documentary anymore. Or even like watch a 3-hour documentary and go through a 3-hour interview to find bits to go into your 3-hour documentary.
So
That
that goes
sense.
back to your what you said about Grock and the blowgate. So how does that mechanism work? If Grock is telling us something on a current event like that, is it getting manually manipulated, or is the algos actually just programmed so deep that it's already like debunking a conspiracy theory right in front of us?
Well, I've got this. So it's 6:07 yesterday, 6:07 a.m. It's saying the video shared by at Silently Sirs is likely AI generated or fabricated. No credible sources like BBC or Politico confirmed the alleged incident involving Frederick Mertz and Macron. And then it says a little more. So it doesn't like the source. It's looking at this guy's account. He said he's shared weird stuff before. He has a history of sharing unverified posts. And but then he says, I can't confirm, but evidence suggests it's a deep fake. Now, jump ahead 12 hours later, 7:48 p.m. The video is real, showing a May 10th meeting in Kiev with Macron, Starmer, and Mertz discussing Ukraine's support in a ceasefire. Claims of cocaine use are unfounded. So it's like, okay, I'll give you that this meeting is real, but we're not going to go with this cocaine, And some people will say it's a handkerchief or a drink stir, not drugs, but nobody grabs a drink stir or a handkerchief like that and gets rid of it. That was just very odd the way. And they were all looking, and you hear them talk. I watched it without the sound, and I watched it with sound this morning, and they're giggling like little schoolgirls, the way they're talking. So you could tell that they got caught red-handed, and they know it, and they're trying to like kind of talk their ways out of it, and they know the press is going to work with them because the press is on their side anyway. So I don't think they had anything to worry about.
Anybody who's ever hidden a bag of drugs in their life knew just by looking at
Doesn't
them
that
what they were doing. That's
Or-
the thing.
or,
It was a
all
dead
right.
giveaway.
Let's be politically correct, or a cookie from your kid. Your kid's coming in, you're like, oh, you don't want that
Sure.
cookie, and you're going to hide it. But it's
Sure.
the same way, and you're looking at them to keep them distracted. You're not looking down at your hand. You're like, look over here.
I know that move.
Yeah, everybody's done it. So it's like, you're not fooling us.
Chris Graves, are you there? Are you? I know you're muted up, and because I'm curious if he is, if we can find him, about his experience with researching, since he's such a super sleuth. Whenever I have a question about some sort of real deep event, I always send a message to Chris. So,
Well, while we wait for him, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, what I do now, usually I check X first. I'll keyword search in X, and then if I can't find it there, I'll go to YouTube, and if I can't find it there, I'll go to Rumble, and then maybe BitChute, and then search engines usually like the fourth thing that I'll do, because usually I'm looking for video of something happening, but that's usually like the fourth or fifth thing I'll go to is a search engine, and and that's changed in the last maybe 2 years. I haven't. I just got put back on X last. I was on a year, and so 2023 in like December, I got put back on after being kicked out in 2020. So I didn't even have any of those accesses for a while. I could get on it, but I couldn't do anything with it. So I didn't use it.
It's really interesting because all of the stuff that you're describing, Rob, is like the superficial exoteric lens with which the public is privy to. And then if you actually get into the refinement of the occulting of the codex that is, imagery throughout history, then it's been a further layers of, you can look at something, but you have to understand the correct meaning in order to understand what the hell the thing you're being shown is. So yeah, it's just that contemporary and then forensic history, and it's just layers of cryptography all the way through.
Which is why you need books. Which is what you have behind you. That's why you need books. But
even then you got to have old ones, and even then you have to have the first copies of old ones, and even then they have to be the correct translation, and even then they have to be through the correct descendants of those translations, not infiltrated or obfuscated by the ruling power of the day. So it's a hell of a maze. Yeah.
You must commiserate with Jay Dyer a lot.
No, I'm familiar with Jay. I've moved on. I like him, but yeah, I figured out there are a few different hoops that he hasn't leveled up to dunking on just yet.
Okay, all right.
Richard Grove.
I love Jay. I love Jay.
Yeah.
That's one of those polite little love taps.
Yeah,
I think their book collections between Richard Grove and Jay Dyer got to be top level.
I don't know how you move after that, after having all those books.
As somebody who just recently went through a move, I can tell you, I had to box all my books up, and I was like, God, I
My
love them
books are
though.
still in boxes. Yeah, I'm not getting rid of my books. I'll never get rid of my books just because you never know. I'm
Yeah,
never getting rid of
okay.
my CDs because you never know.
I moved some CDs too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I
Me
mean, it's
too.
just I like having my music, and I don't want to be told, oh, I don't even use Spotify. I download MP3s and put them on an MP3 player because I don't want one. I don't want anybody knowing what kind of music I'm listening to because I don't want to be fed. Oh, you got to listen to this. You got to. I like finding music. I like finding music that I remember this song. I want to go grab it, and I just put them on MP3 players. I have like 3 or 4 of them, and put them on shuffle, and let that algorithm work. That's not being tainted by Google or Spotify or anybody else. But yeah, it's definitely changed, and it's worse. We're in this one tier, this Disney type internet, and it's hard to get to the next level. And I don't even know if I could get to the next level at this point. I know I could go, there's some sites I could go to find some really dark stuff, but it's hard to get to a place to dig and find that information you're looking for, because what I'm dealing with now is mostly news. So it's everything is just breaking, and there's shit's breaking constantly with Trump. It's like, it's hard to keep up with whatever's going on in that universe. And then all the side shit of people, arguing different terms, and what terms is correct. And it's kind of tiresome, mostly watching these stupid fucking millennials argue. No offense to anyone here.
It is really tiresome. That is exactly how I feel.
I was curious, Rob, because obviously, you guys are OGs in the community. I mean, a lot of us, when we're Googling things or using Yahoo to search things, some of the information we would find and some of the documentaries we would find would be, 9/11 and the road to tyranny. It would be, Alex Jones stuff, him at Waco, on the front lines screaming at a reporter and having, just make.
That was actually an FBI agent he was screaming at. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a pretty. The guy goes, "I'm assessing you." He's like, "Oh yeah, you're assessing me, huh?" And whether you like how Alex Jones does his thing or he doesn't, he gets results at the end of the day, and he's come through a lot of morphosis to how he gets information. It's just weird the way the internet used to be a great source to find articles about things you were looking for to get the actual what's going on. But then who knows if what you're reading is even good, because a lot of these outside sites you were looking at were CIA fronts that were used to create stories that then would get put into the mainstream. They could reference that. We could reference the Asia Times because the Asia Times said it. Now it's true. So we put it in this article. And then is that really true, though? Do we even know if that event actually happened the way they said it did? And so it's hard to get into that and figure out what's true and what's not. And that's the hardest part, because history is written by the winners. And, right now the winners want us all to be robot polishers.
They just have to generate a headline now, and the government can use that headline and do what they want. It's great. It's happening in Canada. Canada, they're getting really good at it in Canada.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this about Canada. Do you think Trump wanted Carney to win and was kind of doing that? You think he kind of
I was going to ask you about it, but yeah, I mean, it was pretty disappointing for me to see like how Trump really did play a part, and they're all buddies, and they've got a bunch of connections there that the elbows up Canada crowd just didn't want to acknowledge, and then Carney basically goes in sniveling up to him, and with all the stuff his opposition was going to do, changes his whole view and the platform. Not that it really matters what they say, but
right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So we'll see what happens. I mean,
it did create some nationalism. America's nationalistic. We love America. I don't think so.
It created some separatism. I think the nationalism is just fake nationalism. I mean, none of those elbows up crowd were anywhere around 2022, and we were really fighting for sovereignty. I mean, it's just disgusting to see the whole meme and the elbows up thing, happen. I mean, basically they just took
is that a hockey thing? Elbows up? Is that
and like we it should have been countered with drop the gloves. That's really what you do. When the elbows are up too much, you drop the fucking gloves. But that never happened. But yeah, it's going to create, like, I think Alberta really is, there's a serious movement for Alberta and
Yeah.
Saskatchewan to separate. It's serious. They've been talking about it for years, but it's going to get really nasty before they let that happen. I mean, the
Well,
East and the media will get
there's a video where Trump Carney says, we don't like this 51st state talk. It's not going to happen. And Trump's like sitting there and he goes,
never say never.
you know, he's like, maybe not. I don't know.
Never say never, he said. Yeah. Yeah.
And that in itself is farcical because you're like, you know, we've always had Canada, you know, above us, and now we might even have part of it at least the parts that aren't liberal. That's which would suck for your country because then you would go delve worse into the nanny state.
I'm in Alberta, and Graham, you're over in Saskatchewan right now?
Yeah, I moved here. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I'd agree with Graham's basic assessment that it is separatism and it is basically regional fragmentation, which after increasing sanctions or trade wars or passive aggressive nudibuddits from one side of the fence to the other will result in a later consolidation under different power brokers. And that's kind of by design because they are ultimately trying to pivot us towards that technate state. And so it's whatever it takes to get us to that place. It's just the puppet class masquerading kind of like a bobblehead on a bulldozer, and everybody runs to putting their attention on it rather than the oligarchic underpinnings that are actually the real power brokers. So Carney is just a Carney running the circus at this point, and he doesn't really mean anything. It's a lot more interesting when you look into the overlap with Ghislaine Maxwell and the whole Bilderberg side of things. So yeah.
But I think he could hold the country together by just moving right of center, which wouldn't even be a big deal because he's already just said the things that his opposition said. And they were so far left in Canada that moving to the center is not going to create his base will let him do anything and follow him through anything. So he just has to come to the center and build some pipelines and extract some resources, and everybody will quiet up and he'll keep the country together that way, which is kind of one of my biggest fears. But my pet conspiracy, the bigger one, is kind of something going on with the King Charles and Trump. I mean, I think there's a weird little UK and USA potential partnership happening here where maybe Trump sort of, I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but, you know, maybe
he did. He sent the letter. He invited him. He invited him into the fold.
Yeah, I mean, maybe King Charles promotes himself to emperor and Trump becomes king of North America. I mean, maybe he is the last president. I mean,
I'd been wondering what Brexit was about, and then I started thinking it's just the Anglo-American connection that they're working on. And then you get the North American Union thing and maybe, you know, regionalization first and then zip it all up later. I definitely thought the explanation for Brexit would be Anglo-American.
The Commonwealth discussion as the invitation to the Commonwealth point. Yeah. It's, I haven't seen anything really develop on that outside of the North American Union direction, which aren't being connected, right? Those aren't seen as the same conversation. But what's interesting is the Commonwealth point was raised, and like Alex Jones, for example, was like, that'll be a revolution if that happens, and it just kind of drifted away. So I wondered if that was more of like a head fake, you know, like, look at this big flashy claim. Because I mean, that seems like an obvious, like, America first, like, well, that doesn't make sense, you know, even though there's a lot of that. But then the idea of the North American Union discussion has clearly begun to continue, whether it's, you know, the Greenland, Panama, Canada kind of overlap that's still continuing. So you wonder if that's just the actual direction and the typical, you know, head fake, go the other direction kind of a game, you know?
Well, and I think we always assumed a North American Union would be a different body that would be over everything. I don't think anybody ever, at least when I thought of it, I never thought of it as the United States would go take over other countries and create the North American Union in itself, which could still be you would get the same results anyway. You'd still have oligarchs and you know, multinational companies controlling all those aspects of the different territories that have been absolved. But you know, what I always thought about it was going to be a new hierarchy on a level of government on top of the United States and on top of Canada and on top of Mexico, drawing them in.
I see.
And now it looks like it's going to be done. It's going to be done differently than I think we thought it was going to.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah,
and I hate to say it, being a Canadian, but I mean, I honestly, right now, I prefer that than going down. Canada is so broken. I think it's beyond repair. And I mean, I'm like, okay, bring on the North American Union if we have some more autonomy as provinces or states or whatever. How crazy that sounds, but I mean,
there will be no autonomy.
Yeah, man. Well, see,
Well,
that's a lot of
right
wishful
now,
thinking
it's
involved there.
ridiculous
But
in
my
times.
thing is that if we're going to lay the, I get what you're saying about the difference. Like, so the idea being a sort of like a UN conglomerate kind of that would like take over the idea of that and become a new entity. But my mind is that they're all the same. They're all part of the same game, man.
Well,
Like the
yeah,
U.S.,
but we're in
Canada,
Canada.
they're all just
But
going
we're
to
in
add
Canada.
into that same governing structure. That's where I see it as. So I guess it depends on how you see the current government versus what might overtake it, whether they're just all vying for that same power over your life.
But think of it as maybe possible economic blocks. If they take like a European bloc or an Asian bloc, including Russia or whatever, and an Anglo-American bloc, they may be doing it to set up like non-competitive kind of oligopoly situations where if you have to compete with Chinese goods or whatever, I think there's maybe a paradigm shift in their expectation of how much profit they can extract if they're in a truly competitive world market. And maybe that's why they want to regionalize. I mean, I really think there's a chance that that's it's purely venal.
I mean, I'm of the mind that our governments, again, I guarantee there are factions and different elements that don't all want the same things, old school neocon versus technocratic kind of direction. The point, though, is that I think the leading controlling structures absolutely want everything the globalist idea has to offer. I think that's very obvious with everything that's taking place, despite narrative.
Yes.
So I'm agreeing with you. Is just I think that's interesting and overlap that there's a different element to it. Go ahead.
And the tariffs, I think, may be designed to give an excuse to replace the World Trade Organization with another trade organization that would be a real world government. So like the EU started with a steel and coal consortium, and it became what will ultimately be a political thing. So if that it could be a stepping stone to where, yes, there's these regional blocks, but their coordination will be, so there'll be subgroups. Looks like this tariff thing is making subgroups. The coordination would be perhaps an international body with enforcement power and use this like nut job, Trump's a nut, whatever, as like we really need to have some governing body or there could be another Trump kind of thing. So the regionalization doesn't necessarily mean there would not be world government. And I just think looking at it from an economic point of view, maybe more illuminating at this point.
Almost sold as the counterbalance to that,
right?
So you think leaning into that's going to save you more.
Oh,
than
yeah,
mechanism that traps you. It's typical.
That's in the report from Iron Mountain. It's like they said they give you world government so that you like your government better. Like it's really funny how they play that off each other. Yeah.
Well, that's the way they'd back us into the North American Union. They're like, well, we're just going to take Greenland because it's got minerals, and we'll take Alberta because it's got minerals. And then, Mexico's got people that want to work. And so we'll just take them too. And we're going to get rid of their drug dealers and their gangs and make it all sanitized. And there'll be, one center of power, which will be at a, DC and a few bases. And then eventually Canada will go, well, we got no choice. Our economy's, destroyed. So we have to join America. And then you have this North American Union that could then, whether you like Trump or not, he's not, who knows what's going to go on with him, but there's not going to be another person that they're going to let into this fold that could come that's not controlled after this, that, there's, Trump has some autonomy, but I don't think there's going to be any autonomy after him. I think it's going to be all controlled. So, and hopefully whatever they create has some levers that you could still have some independence. But I think those days are moving away. Unfortunately, it's sad.
Have y'all talked at all about this idea of the U.S. having a sovereign wealth fund and or the commodities deals with the Ukraine? So on the one hand, like those are related in my mind because there's a willing and dealing. Did you guys talk about this already?
We haven't talked about that yet, but it's like 115 trillion or something. That's in the U.S. sovereign wealth fund.
I didn't see the latest thing. I feel like that's just total corruption. That we don't have wealth. We are a debtor nation. Let's say we pay 6%. That's the interest rate. So for you to get a return, it would have to be a guaranteed, no risk, after fee return of 6%, which isn't going to happen because fees can be enormous. So I think that thing is just a giant fee generating machine to transfer wealth. It's like skimming that off the top. But at the same time, they had that commodities thing in the Ukraine, which is also kind of like it should be a private, our government has no business in those kind of deals, yet they're doing it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cronyism. But Trump said something like, to the effect of, not a quote, but that this would give us a real reason to defend, quote, Ukraine on the
There it
ground
is.
if we, yeah, and
Yeah,
that,
if we have
that
American
I'm worried
companies,
about.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you have American companies there, then you're like, oh, you can't attack our American
Exactly.
companies because now
It's
we have to go
right.
defend our American companies.
Right. It seems like
That's
it's
where I
Iraq all
don't-
over again in a similar way. You know, it's just
Right.
creating the justification. I mean, what's interesting is even if you want to argue from a place of good intentions, you know what I mean? Like it still ends up in the way where people can abuse the situation to, I just think, maintain the occupation, which is already technically what's going on, but like in earnest, you know. And then to the wealth dynamic, I think it's interesting because I think what we're going to see is what you're saying. I completely agree with, but then the other side of it, where you can still benefit those that might, you know, basically with the crypto shoe dropping or whatever the new shift into financial element will be, then you can flip into the new dynamic and, you know, basically argue that you do have this flood of but it's all going to come from money stolen from Ross Ulbright or whoever else they've taken information, you know, crypto from and so on. Like it becomes a, you know, a bait and switch, and all the people like us, people that bought into Trump's crypto at $100 are going to be the ones losing out in the long run, you know?
I kind of just want to say that whatever they brand it to be, it's still a moral relativist superstructure that subjugates humanity by socially leveraging cybernetics. And as long as we exist in that hamster cage, we're fucked. So
Well, of
let's
course.
stop playing into it.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, man. Of course. Just kidding. I agree with you. It's just funny that most people are like, what did you just say? Okay.
Yeah, so it's smart people figured out how to make cages that we live in, and then we paint the bars to look like they're comfortable, and we refuse to let go of them, and then we elect the biggest bitch to be supreme over us so that we don't actually have to garner the courage to leave the cage. That's how it works.
Right. Or that free-range chicken that doesn't ever leave the cage. They open the door. Hey, go ahead.
Because they always raise your property tax. That's how it works.
All right.
Property tax never goes down.
Shouldn't
A
exist.
good plug for Jones Plantation right there. Talking about Jones Plantation, the movie. Oh, by the way, speaking
Somebody's
of
been a
that,
narrator by that director recently, I think. Good Lord.
yeah. So speaking of that, anyone going to be in Arizona May 31st, Saturday, May 31st, Tempe, Arizona, the premiere of Barnum World, Drew Treglia's new movie. He's the guy that directed Jones Plantation. Legal Man. You may know Legal Man from Twitter. He played Mr. Jones in the movie. It's a fantastic movie. If you go to jonesplantationmovie.com, you can watch the trailer. It's really well done. It's based on Larkin Rose's 13-minute short. Well, he's doing a new one called Barnum World, and Lee's in it again as a slimy Hollywood producer. It's fantastic. And I'm narrating it. So if you guys are interested, go to Eventbrite and type in Barnum World, Tempe, May 31st. It's got a whole theater. So come on out and get weird with us. It'll be a lot of fun.
I've seen part of it at the premiere of Anarchapulco. It's really freaking cool. So check it out, people.
Yeah, we saw they showed the first 30 minutes of it.
Nice.
Is this it?
That's Jones Plantation. Yeah,
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
I
You
like
watched
the
it-
poster.
You watched. I've got the poster too. Yeah, if you watch the trailer for it, you'll see. It's slavery, but of course it's that metaphor for like they make everybody free. They turn everybody free, but you know, freedom isn't free.
Right.
And then
Well,
they create-
when your whole environment is the prison, you know, then everybody's free.
Yeah, exactly. And so that just made me think of it because that's one of the lines that they use in Jones Plantation. You know, freedom isn't free. It's going to cost you something to live in this rat race.
But that's been true, you know, since the beginning of time. You have to do something to get something. There's nothing. You're not just gonna be able to lay there and have, you know, unless you're on the Wall-E ship and have the tubes and the giant drinks and the hover thing. You know, it's just, we're not there, and I don't know if I ever want to be in that world. That seems like a horrible place to live.
Well, but a lot of people do though. That's their version of freedom. They just want to be told what to do. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing that's an eternal struggle. I mean, we're talking about all this like that's not all humanity. That's only like less than half of us probably. The rest of them just want to be told what to do, and they're free that way. So I feel like there needs to be a massive divorce between the two types, but it'll never happen.
But
But
Grant,
that's an interesting thought, though, right? So, do you actually think? And I don't know. I mean, I'm on the fence that they did they consciously think they want to be told what to do, or is that what they've been convinced to think, or rather that that they that they are being told what to do and they're convinced that's not what's happening? Because I actually
No,
find it hard to believe
it's
that they want
inherent.
that.
I
Go
think
ahead.
it's inherent that they just want to be told. They just don't want to think for themselves. It's too
Yes,
much
but you get what I'm saying, though,
responsibility.
right? Like, I don't think they would admit that to themselves on the surface, that I just want to be told what to do. But
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
agree
They
with you for
definitely
some of
don't.
them.
Yeah, they have. I mean, go through COVID in Canada, and they'll tell you. Like, they'll just want to follow that. I don't want to think. I don't want to think out of the box. I mean, talk to the boomers about politics in Canada. They're just like, no, 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 no. They can't talk about it. They won't talk about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think like that person, if you went and said, would you just check a box that says forever tell me what to do? And I think they would say no, but you're right though. If you walked through their choices, that's what they're doing. So I do agree with you. It's an interesting philosophical point though, right?
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
It's
Well,
like a
no, I
I
thought I
think was
heard
Zappa like
evidence.
that, saying that kind of thing. Frank Zappa, where you don't even realize that what
Right.
the choices that you are making are
Yeah.
already defined, so that the entire idea of choice is an illusion. I
Yeah,
have
I
free
think-
will, but I might not even know what the other choices are.
I feel
Okay,
like
real
I
quick.
based that though on evidence in Canada of people actually just saying that. Like, just tell me what to do, government. Like, I'm
Yeah.
following the rules because for me, following the rules is less stress and it's freedom to me.
Right, but that's because it's how it's been branded, is the idea that they are experts, that they are telling you the truth, that they are competent, and not that they're actually maniacal, go along with the chain of obedience and have been looped into being a one with a death cult. People don't generally look at the things that way, but that's actually how they work. So the kid who is still on that level of their respective development wants to believe that their parents didn't lie to them and Santa Claus actually gave them their presents. They don't want that feeling of betrayal. And that's kind of where we're at in the sense of the general awakening of public. People are starting to realize that, oh, actually, my parents have to work a shitty job that they don't particularly like to buy a bunch of crap that was slave labor overseas. And then that kid has an even worse life than me because of the sanctions that my country put on his parents. So who the fuck wants to wake up from the simple version to the complex one only to realize it's a nightmare, you know?
But I would add though, to Graham's point, I think he's right though. We have gotten to the point now where we're beginning to go beyond that, where people are like, yes, I want that flavor. I do want to be, because they've been conditioned to think that's like the new freedom or whatever. You're right though. It's like a weird, but I think the point we're saying is that I think we're at a stage where most people, if you can show them they're watching shadows, somehow get them to recognize that, they would go, well, I want to get the fuck out of the cave. I think that is where we have that opportunity, and I think we're flirting with that now, and it's like that kind of all or nothing moment where if we don't do it, the rock's going to be rolled in front of it. That's where I feel. Maybe I'm a little more alarmist at the moment, but I kind of feel like that's where we are.
You're correct. You're correct. Yeah.
Well, a example of that would be the people who get out of jail and then they want to go back in because it's they have been they've adapted to just having a schedule for them, being
The
fed.
hurt locker.
Yeah. So, so to bring up, I guess that's kind of an example of what Graham and Ryan and Robert and everybody was been talking about. Like, okay, are we conditioned to like want this, or, naturally, organically, that's what we want, right? And I guess you could make the argument that some of the people who want to be told what to do and whatnot, it's because since their whole lives, they've been born, they've been told what to do, and that becomes the norm. That becomes what they've been conditioned to life to be, and not to have that freedom. And it's like that the kids in school who are the rule followers, they're always doing what's, they don't see it as a lack of freedom. They see it as like that's just what you're supposed to do. You're
The
supposed
way
to.
it is.
Yeah.
This is all called the Delphi technique, what we've been discussing. I couldn't come up with the name, and I had to search it, and it took me a second. But it was developed by the Rand Corporation in the early 1950s. So there you go.
I did a couple of deep dives on that. It's really interesting. When they say build consensus, they are not talking about getting people to agree. They go in with their decision. They want you to get, and there are so many techniques, and I've actually witnessed it where I could hear someone say, like, does anybody have any objections? You can call this number. Does anybody like the idea? Tell us, share. And it's like, what? Yeah, it's crazy.
If you don't like it, don't say anything.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And they identify who's going to be, they make sure they separate people who might object. They have like plants in the audience. It's really interesting. Rosa Quarry, who did Behind the Green Mask, talked about the Delphi effect and also counter tactics.
Well, it's just social engineering, and the thing is today, imagine, I mean, we don't have to look. I mean, it's insane to think about what you're doing. If they've been doing that for that long, you know, Bernays even before, you know, like the legitimate, like just old school style, and now add social media, add technology, add artificial intelligence, add, you know, we passed that mark a long time ago. I think we're seeing the real result, the fruit of that kind of social engineering at whatever is executed today. So it's just terrifying to think about, you know, false reality.
I'm glad
Well,
Chris
we're
Graves is here.
definitely
I
in a
want
false
to
reality.
introduce him to the show real quick. He's there. And say I'm really glad to it's good to see you, my friend. And I'm glad you joined us tonight. I know you're not in the best of positions here, but I'm glad to see you. You're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Muted.
There you go.
He's so considerate.
You get to
I'm
hear my
always-
breathing, my mouth.
I'm
breathing.
always glad to see you, Charlie and Monica, everybody here. I had to step away from the laptop because, unfortunately, I've been having to plan a funeral because my mother was taken off of life support yesterday. I don't want to bring the room down, but I really wanted, I really wanted to participate tonight. So I'm just glad. I'm really, really glad for the invite, and I'm just catching up right now because
Yeah,
the
well-
gentleman just left just now when we were planning that. So, you know, real life happens, and unfortunately, um, uh, yeah, no, I just want to say I'm just really happy to be here, and I don't mean to bring everything
You're a
down.
part of the family, Chris.
Thank you.
We appreciate you so much, and I know you. Sometimes you just need to be around some other people. So we're glad to have you.
Thank
And,
you.
But
Do you want to talk
and
about your
since-
mother a little
Yeah.
bit?
Do you want to explain?
Yeah, she I went in for a congestive I went into the hospital about 2 weeks ago, and I had congestive heart failure where I literally couldn't breathe. I felt like my lungs, I felt like my chest, like someone was stepping on my chest. And the day I was released, I was able to get a taxi back from the hospital. And when we arrived to my driveway, my aunt was there, and she let me know that my mother, when she was at dialysis, she fell in the parking lot, and she had 2 heart attacks, and she was unconscious for 20 minutes. So she ended up having 17% brain function. So I had to make the decision over the weekend whether or not to pull the plug, so to speak. And my mother is not someone that would want to be on machines for the rest of her life. So she, it was just ironic that my mother and I had a dark sense of humor. You know, I got a dark sense of humor. So just the fact that when she had this accident in that parking lot, it was 2 days before her 71st birthday. She held on for about a week. And when I say ironic, the fact that we were supposed to have some kind of like a celebration of not only her birthday, but Mother's Day, by having a Twilight Zone marathon. And she passed yesterday, which was Mother's Day. So, yeah, so I'm just glad that she's not in pain right now. So, um, having somewhere to come and preoccupy my mind, like with podcasts and stuff. My friend Wheezy, shout out to him. He had me on Saturday night, but he had no idea what was going on because Friday night was when my sister and I were able to say goodbye to my mother. So just programs like this, and even Sam Tripoli, I reached out to him too, and he's got a big heart, and everybody here, I really appreciate you guys letting me in um, on the conversation and somewhere to focus positive energy, if you believe in that or not. And I'll end with that.
That Twilight Zone marathon makes a lot of sense now that I know your research background.
Yeah,
You've
that's right.
always been into it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That's funny. Well, it's good to see you, Chris.
it's good to see you.
Well, this kind of highlights, the importance of doing these shows. And I know during COVID, that was something that it seemed a little silly, but a lot of people reached out to, I'm sure many of us, and talked about how they felt like they were a crazy person because everybody around them was telling them they were a crazy person. And then listening to these shows made them feel sane. And they felt like I had some friends out there and kept them level-headed and helped them through what they were going through. And I know in my personal life, I'm always telling people, I'm like, there's nothing social about social media. Some of the loneliest people are the people who spend all their time on social media. But I think in some cases, this does help connect people and bring them it gives them the opportunity to kind of build a community of maybe like-minded people that they might not have in their own personal lives.
Yeah, I would say that I think that's important for today as well. And just Chris in general, thanks for sharing that, man. Really sorry to hear that, and really, touched me, brother. So I'm sorry to hear that. And thank you for being here. Today in general, everything. I think in rapid succession, we're seeing the same kind of dynamic. And I think everybody in this room had that, like you just said, emails or calls, saying like, if I didn't see your show, I would have, I wouldn't be alive. Something bad would have happened. I want to give it to my child. I think today we're seeing this idea in every single little kind of microcosm of that, or even the larger ones, where they're really desperately trying to get us to think that we're the insane one that doesn't see the big picture. And I think that's, in everything we're dealing with right now. I mean, whether it's Israel, whether it's, you go down the list, it's important for them to really think that the poor party side or what everybody thinks. And we made those during COVID. They were just like, you're not alone. It's the same thing. So it's important to think about how much that continues, and they keep us divided. That's all they need,
Well, and I think one thing what helps me is, you get caught up in all this news and thinking about other parts of the world and what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And man, sometimes you just got to look around. Hey, what's going on in my neighborhood? What's going on with my neighbor? What's going on, at my kid's school? What are these things local that I can have an effect on? Where can I spend my money? I like to go to the get kombucha at the farmer's market on Saturdays. And, it's just like looking at the things you can control. And then, it's the serenity prayer thing, that the paradox you get caught into. What are the things you can change? What are the things you can't? And how do you know what you can and can't change? And that, I think, really helps. I sometimes have to sit back and look, is this even worth getting pissed off about? Because political things, I'll get pissed off about these stupid people that are protesting, or these judges that are doing this. And I'm just like, I can't really control this. I can, warn other people, which I thought was empowering during COVID, warning people not to take the goddamn shot. And, nobody in my immediate family took it, but some of my extended family did take it, and some of them didn't. Some of them heed the warning, but it's like, you still have to at least try. But also at the end, you can't control what these people are going to do, and they're going to do what they're going to do for their own reasons. So but it is good to have these communities to spread information and talk about ideas and, codify concepts and stuff like that. So you can, move forward at least with a better understanding of certain topics, because it's good to be good at one topic, but you're not going to be good at everything. So I think it does help to have these groups that get together and do this. And Chris, I'm sorry for your mother. That's terrible. 71's, way too early to be gone from this earth. We should all be living very comfortably into our 90s, I feel, without having heart, issues and body issues and stuff like that. We have the technology to help ourselves, and it's sad that we don't, that that information's locked up. So I try to free that information as much as possible.
So I'm thinking about your comments about local, like what can you do? Where can you spend your money? Stuff like that, community support. I get a lot from my church, just my whatever, I'm Catholic, and it's totally above. There's no racial divide. It doesn't make any difference at all. We all kind of feel like we have the same values, very helpful towards each other. My mother, who died last year at 95, would never go to a hospital. No, she didn't let any nurses, hospice, nothing. She was very devout Catholic. We all got a lot of comfort out of that. And now it just made me think, uh, people are psyched that the Pope is American, and I could not be more worried. Like, I do not want that just seems to me, I guess my best guess as what one of the points might be is like an Obama type person who function where they promise unity and they deliver division. And I always think if you want unity, you can't do that with a progressive because I mean, I don't know if I should call the new pope a progressive, but I think he said some things about Ukraine that weren't right and just some stuff. I don't know. I'm already like, but if you have somebody who's kind of cutting edge progressive, you have to drag a lot of people along with you. You're going to lose a lot of people. You can't have unity. A unifying one would be someone who wanted to get back to the lowest common denominator, things that we all agree upon, back it up. And so I'm just a little worried that this guy's American. That means like there's the psyops on us. And I don't know if anybody else had any reactions.
Oh yeah, I mean, I personally think it doesn't matter who is Pope at this point. Whatever,
but it's American. That means that they're going to use it against us.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's my
and
concern.
it's an American guy that I don't think it's a big Trump. He's going to push against whatever Trump's doing, and that's what they wanted. They wanted somebody to come in and go against Trump, which
not a unifying force.
Right.
Just out of
It's
curiosity,
definitely
when you say they, who are we talking about? Like the international community?
Well, whoever is in.
Whoever
if you
made
listen
this
to Leo
decision,
Zagami, yeah, whoever
wasn't like a vote of cardinals, in my opinion.
Well, I mean that's what's being presented, and that's the historical reality. I don't doubt. You don't mean votes don't count in most
Ratzinger
contexts
wasn't
as far
like
as I'm
that.
concerned.
Francis wasn't like that. They were all behind the scenes stuff. Sorry.
I think they always are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think. I mean, you go to the archives of the Vatican. That's where you're going to find the real information, which we all want to get into. But that's the information you're never going to see, and I think that's their job, is to keep us in this level up here where we have a pope and we're going to do this pomp and circumstance, just like everything that is going on these days. You look at these old institutions, you're like, do we really need this institution? I mean, what is the Vatican doing at this point? They're advocating for open borders. They're advocating for what a same-sex marriage. I mean, it's things that are against what they are.
Are they advocating for same-sex marriage? I don't think so.
Well,
open borders.
Abortion. Okay,
abortion.
I think abortion.
No, but see,
kind
even
of,
that though, I think we're getting an over. Like I do know what you're saying though. There's these, I think the last pope was a more clear example than at least what the new one is professing to be more middle. But I know they're opening the door to like the idea of like the transgender stuff and like the unity, diversity, which opens the door to the things we're concerned about. But I wouldn't put it as fine point like you did. I don't think they're like pro abortion and same-sex marriage.
I don't see him speaking out against it. So I guess that's what I should say. Yeah.
That
maybe they aren't.
I'm worried about that.
Rah.
Yeah, that was my first thing with this guy. I'm like, my guess is he's going to come, and the way we have like these, I would say the political converts like Vance, JD Vance, Candace Stone, they're converting to Catholicism. And I'm not buying it as being sincere. And now I feel like we'll probably get, and my first reaction was a bunch of LGBTQ converts to Catholicism and create this, Obama, Eric Holder style disunity to a level we hadn't seen before. So I totally share that fear, but they're usually very careful about how they say things. And maybe like Trump even will say, they're a bunch of rapists, but they're also nice people. Like they'll make sure that whatever they're saying can be interpreted two ways or is strictly within the book. Pope Francis was the first pope I could ever really pin on to advocate for the redistribution of wealth, I believe, because that's stealing. And I never could really, no matter how liberal the popes were, they never really actually said that. So I think they will cross lines. I don't know about this guy. He's definitely he said one thing about Ukraine that, Russia was doing this for purely imperialistic reasons, which is definitely not true. they may have imperialistic ideas. I don't know, but that's not what the Ukraine situation is. Not only about that, and he said it was only about that, and I don't think it's about that at all. But and then another, other stuff like that. So I don't feel good about it. But yeah, they're usually pretty careful about what they actually say. They have to stay within very, very well-defined confines, which is, I think, a saving grace. But I am just super, super worried of what power and influence he will have, and I suspect for disunifying this country.
Don't we find
I
it
do
weird
have some
though?
Go ahead.
Well, don't we find it weird though that like that's my issue. I agree with you. And I don't think any pope or why is a religious leader talking about politics in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, because it's a politicized dynamic today. And that's what I worry about. But the American point I agree with. I think that I'm worried more so about the idea that it's, Americans are some of the most propagandized people on the planet. I think we can all acknowledge that. So that's a worry for me there. But I would like to say that what I think is interesting, and maybe this is a slight deviation from what, the Pope point, but that I think very clearly, let me say this first. I think we all agree that the woke politics, which of the left, which woke left and right is a very real thing today. It's culture politics, it's cancel culture, hate speech. My point though is that we know that the whole woke mindset, the trans conversation, the censorship, these are very problematic and bad things, right? That were weaponized. But I'm of the mind that wasn't the end goal. That was a tool like the rest of the things we're seeing. And so right now, if we're focused on the woke, whether against these things or that, I worry we're going to fall for the trap as opposed to where all of them lead, which is like, for example, a good way to see it. USAID, for example, yes, absolutely was all about pushing in all sorts of crazy woke things. I think that it was not about those things. It was using those as a vehicle to execute regime change. And now the narrative shifts, the tools change. And to that point, in fact, there are places where even the Trump administration is still spending money on HIV circumcision in Africa. There's 3 different grants I was just talking about. So because in those places, those things still apply, but we don't talk about them. So I think it's important to, be against those things, but let's not, my opinion anyway, make that the focal point of what we're, aiming at, but that all of them use different narratives to achieve the same end. I mean, at least from a two-party illusion perspective. That's
which is to rush headlong into a technocratic world government.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And we should stop those things too, right? But I think it, missing forest for the trees, I worry about anyway.
Well, I think a lot of the transgender stuff is becoming an attack on the family unit, which then creates the state as your family, which is what they want at the end. They want the state to be your family. They want a brave new world. That's what the technocratic elite wants. They want that. But to go back to the Pope real quick, I didn't even know this. Apparently, they say, he's from Chicago. He's actually, I think, from Louisiana. That's where his family is from.
Oh,
he was a Creole from Louisiana, and relatives of mine, because I'm from Louisiana. I've got some live in southern Louisiana, and my mom was getting texts from people who like knew his brother, who was like, Bob's the Pope now, calling people up saying that, which is kind of interesting and kind of humanizes the guy a little more. And Louisiana is interesting because they seem to be sort of liberal, but they've one of these places that was, kind of a Democrat stronghold for the longest time. And all of a sudden these people, I think what happened was the Democrats were like for workers and they wanted to see things done for the worker. And then they realized, hey, we're getting screwed. And we're going to switch sides. And at least these guys are at least talking to us. And I don't know if they're helping much. I kind of still see Louisiana as a third world state, but, having nice stuff. But, and there was, I think it was Tulsa, somebody's deputy is from Louisiana doing the wildlife and fisheries, who kind of looks like a man, but wearing dress. And there was questions, and that's another thing. You look at these people nowadays and you're like, is that a man, is that a woman? There's a lot of that going on, which makes you question, is that a deeper thing? Now we're questioning everybody's sex of what's going on, and I see a lot of that.
It could be. I think I struggle with the transhumanism thing. How much of that is just to freak us out? How much is really going to happen? Blah blah blah. But androids and shit, like there are like robot people, and the more you disconnect from your normal ability to recognize, I have this joke about Canadians, like the uncanny valley. So like you'll listen to a comedian and you're like, that's like, I don't really get that joke, or you just something a little William Shatner, who's the Sarah, that kid, like I just have this funny thing. And if you have people who have a different cultural background but have the exact same accent as you, there's a little uncanny valley. And the more you have, or the more immigration, or you watch Apple TV and the shows they make for Apple TV, people are weird looking in those shows. Have you anybody ever noticed that? Like they're a little weird looking, like something's very wrong. It's like an uncanny, and I think that they're getting us ready for the to not recognize when to kind of get over that uncanny valley with like artificial people, androids.
So it's like safe space ecosystems that people retreat to breed in a closed loop at the discretion of the demographics they prescribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard the Pope,
Transhumanism is an obvious logical next step. I mean, I don't know whether we're, I mean, I would argue it's already happening. And I think we can prove that, at least in like experimental and like rich billionaire background type of ways. But I think that the idea, like you're saying, of the cyborg element, or I mean, the Android or whatever we're calling element, and then the overlap to, like, people argued years ago, just even having the phone always on your body is sort of an element of overlap of like a cyborg, or pacemakers, right? We're already to the level of the injectable nanotechnology kind of stuff. And so how long until then, like, Black Mirror kind of stuff, right? Well, you can augment your eyes or something like that. So I think we're already there. I think I think what you said was nailing it, that they need us to be sort of like, not just ready for it, but calling for it, right? So they're engineering us to sort of go like, I want those things, and I saw it on the new show, but I think that's already there. I worry how much of that's happening in the, like I said, like the billionaire class, the elitist class, that we don't even recognize, like internally, or genetic engineering for their children. I bet that's been going on for decades.
They talk about that hurdle in building robots where it's just, there's something about it that's not human, and you instinctively recognize it. But what if you came at it from two different angles? You took actual humans and made them less human at the same time. And that sort of built the bridge from both ends.
Is that the Turing threshold?
The Turing test?
Yeah. Isn't that what it is?
Something. I don't know.
There's
a name for it, and I don't know.
I think it's the Turing test. But yes, it's like East and West. You can't combine them into a world government unless either the East catches up to the West or the West drops back. It doesn't matter which way you do it.
Yeah, no, but the transhumanism part, both together. Transhumanism comes into play as well with the overlap of the transgender point, which is what I was including before. Look, this is not like, this is my opinion, but I think it's a very obvious, like, logical overlap to get you accustomed to altering your body in surgical ways. You know what I mean? And then seeing that overlap, and whether that was the design or not. I mean, isn't it interesting to see how much that, obviously it still happens and it's still a conversation driven by some people, but that rapidly petered out. Right. There was a point where at the UK, it was WPath was the leading hospital in the world with doing these things. Right. I was covering this at the peak of this, like right around the time of Walsh's documentary.
What kind of stuff were you talking about?
The transgender surgery on children kind of thing. Right when Matt Walsh came out with that great documentary about that, that was that kind of like the peak. People were talking about it. And I was showing that WPath at the time, the president of the company was speaking out about how they were being rash with children, how they weren't checking things properly. And that was an Associated Press article. And so I was going like, how the fuck is this not like already collapsing? And then it went on for what, like, we remember like 6 months, a year more, where it was like really happening. And then it just disappeared. Like, it still happens, but it just, go ahead.
I think it's not going to be a popular thought, but I feel like what got Trump elected was that finally people, because I grew up in a very kind of post-racial, everybody should get along, I'm willing to move towards the middle kind of world. And what makes people really get, I think the tipping point for to get women off the couch and just say, fuck this, I'm not compromising anymore, like this is the end, was the transgender stuff on kids, which they targeted kids, like, which makes, they had excuses. But I feel like that it was because I really do think that, like, Elon Musk is ushering in or is the face of ushering in the technocracy, and
he's
Trump
he's the good side of it.
Trump makes you feel okay about it, whatever, the cult of personality thing, very instrumental, but when
I say good, I don't think he's good.
I know, that's why I did that for the people watching.
They made it look good.
Exactly. He's the positive.
So I
think they rushed it. That's how they had to get that radical to get this radical.
So I agree with that, basically, that it is the pushing of one radical to the next in order to race to the bottom in one way or another, and then you're trying to stop that as the excuse for
it's a technocracy, both.
Totally.
Either one, whoever won would have gotten it.
No, I just want to throw out this kind of idea. I think there's a duality of the unveiling of what transhumanism is, and that's, if you think of ideas as technology, they've chipped us already. So let's be really clear about it. If
Right.
ideas are a technology, they have chipped us already, and we are operating according to those chips, that functional operating system programming that we have accepted within us. So at a certain point, they want to present it like the primary modality of technocracy is actually technology. No, the primary modality of technology is the ideas that get you to think in a way in which you then become receptive to the machine.
That's the Zappa thing too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and here's an even crazier overlap to where with the world that I believe we're already in, right? So you're talking about like just like almost a metaphorical idea that your ideas are in essence already that concept, right? But we're already at a point where we're talking about nanotechnology. We know for a matter of fact that they use the lipid nanoparticles, which aren't necessarily technology as opposed to just particles that size. I do believe that there were things in these, and I think we all talked about that beyond that. And so just the Charles Lieber overlap, the Bob Langer, who was the co-founder of the Moderna shot, and scientifically, these are people that worked on optogenetic, magnum genetics. And so the idea being that you could have something internally. They did this with ferret nanoshots. Guardian called it the magneto shot. We're basically using lights or magnetics, which that was an interesting overlap with the COVID time. They could create action or impulse in the body, right? And then you overlap that with another level of like the neuroscience, James Giordano kind of government stuff, which, I mean, we're at a point now where I don't know why like Catherine Austin Fitts is convinced that they're using neuroscience already on us through our devices. So it's like, think about that. So it's like, we're back. I keep wondering if we're stuck back on cameras and like phone taps, and we're like, and they're over here with nanotech smart dust surveilling us.
They don't even need anything physical. I think they can beam that stuff right into your brain.
Sorry to scare everybody, but
no,
that's true.
You're both beautiful, and I love you, Ryan. Thank you so much for providing all of that wealth of knowledge just now so people can understand just how off the rails we're actually at with the human experimentation levels, because it is that bad and it's even worse. So thank you for that, and I completely agree. And as far as K-Fits' various different contentions about secret technology, I also agree with that. And so that's kind of what we're looking at is how the hell do you wade through a soup that deep without getting cooked along the way? I don't know.
Yeah.
Total information awareness, 2001.
Right. Yeah.
Look where we were 20 years ago, but think that where we were back then, they were already where we are now.
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about. I heard that about Nintendo stuff when they released I don't know if it's true or not, but like argument is when they released whatever it is, the Nintendo, or they already had like the PlayStation level. And they just slowly dripped them out. It's like, that's a terrifying thing to think about what you're saying with the tech today,
You couldn't give kids, we had Pitfall. You couldn't give us what's going on now back then. We would lose our minds. We would lose our ever-living shit.
Right.
It's like, what? I mean, because I've started playing video games with the Atari and moved my way up. And I look at this shit now and I'm like, no, I'm back in the 2016 games. I don't need to go any further.
Right. We're playing Pong back then. Think about, Call of Duty.
Yeah,
Just remember the technology is always 30 years ahead, right?
At least. I think at least it's
yeah.
But who's using that technology? Because you would think
military.
They're using it, and they're using it on especially now with that. It happened with that Jade Helm. That was a big test to use the internet to collect real-time information on what's going on around them, wherever they're at. So if they drop into a location, boom, they're just basically looking at phones going, okay, we're going to go to this house. This guy's cool. We're going to get shit from him, or we're going to take this guy out and we're going to create our space here. And now you got AI distilling all this information and boom, beaming it in. Hey, by the way, go, 2 clicks up and we're going to take this farm over and that's going to be our space. That's where we're going to station. And then from here, we're going to, capture the airwaves and move out.
I think we're beyond that even now, though. Like, I think,
sure.
So this
you don't
gets
need soldiers. Yeah.
No, I mean that too. I mean more about your point about the surveillance. Like, so AI you mentioned and so on. Like, I'm of the mind. Like, have you guys talked about like the digital twins overlap? You know what I mean? Like so basically right now, like you mentioned, total information awareness. Even before that, we know that was still happening, right? So Palantir, the current iteration of that, like they have been absorbing data points, like post social media, for example, where we're just dumping everything we can. So the argument quickly for those that don't know is that, they've been collecting data on you individually out there and all of us in this country, possibly the world, for so long that I've seen studies on this. The argument is that they can use like a SimCity kind of dynamic, and let's just say it's like just of your town. And based on information that's kind of near real time being added to it, like whatever you posted 30 seconds ago, AI gathers it and can decide and put out information about where you'll be next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Like, and to like a 90th percentile kind of idea. And I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it makes sense to me. And so if like we're at a point now where they don't even need that stuff, like they're gonna like, oh, he'll be there tomorrow at 4 p.m. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the level they're at. And that is, again, it goes to this level of people push back on it because it's just alarming, terrifying. Let's hope it's not real. Like, what could we do about that? But I think that's where we are, if not further, you know, because I mean, they've told us about that stuff.
Dude, it's like I totally agree with you, but then it's like you get into the X-Tech MIB level shit and they're using astral and etheric optics. So on every different fucking level of this psyop, you have to level up to the next level of control because everything you just described is kind of just like the Gorgon stare SimCity perspective, and that's very much there in an omnipresent, ubiquitous underpinning of monitoring us as we gradually become more aware of our raw power as individuals. That's where we're at. So it's very much the supervised hatching of the species at large. It's really interesting.
That's a gross way to put it.
That's what's happening, man. You can regard it almost as viewing us like a particular color of fungus from an arbiter perspective that presides over us.
They're the heat lamp and we're the little egg hatching right now.
That's how they see us when they stomp on us like this shit.
When Rob mentioned Jade Helm, just a reminder, there's an interview with a soldier that was participating in that, and they asked him, "What are you guys role playing?" And he says, "Well, we're rounding up people that are protest dissidents, things like that." Like, well, like who? And he says, "Well, you know, like constitutionalists."
Yeah, they don't. And you almost said protest. There's no protest going on. They just know who to round up because they've been watching what we're posting. Right. So they know exactly who to go after.
Don't forget, constitutionalists. Go ahead, Graham.
I think that show Dark Skies had a scene where they were all looking at, like, everybody has their own consciousness signature, so they can just tell like who we are from our consciousness. You know,
God, that's a real thing too, though.
That's got us all mapped out.
Yeah, that's astral and etheric optics. That's what I meant.
Right.
Exactly. That,
right.
Yeah.
There's some, like, the idea being that you have like a unique aura signature that like never dissipates, and like literally the argument being that if they knew where you ever have been in your lifetime, they could go back there with this technology and trace that aura back to where you are currently. Now that's whether that's real or not. I've heard that's been an argument. Like, somebody I know who spoke to somebody in the military claims that's real. That means nothing to somebody out there watching, but to me, that kind of stuff is where we are. You know, think about that. That means nothing is ever secret ever again.
Bro,
So
that's
now ascension and cleansing your aura is not so crazy anymore.
Yeah, right. Going all the way back to
Okay, but even then, technically, that would overlap with the Akashic, and that would be calendrical isometrics, by which both the past and the present are ultimately ripples in the greater pond of the constraints of existence. So you could apply that same basic thing to the trajectory of all of human history, too.
You just have to have a good time in life and be a good person.
Yeah, right,
man.
Yeah,
you can't
seriously.
let this stuff keep you down.
By land.
That you can't. You got to, you can't, it's the idea. I think all of us at some point probably have the worry about, like, are we being hacked, or are they trying to mess with my computer, or, like whatever else, right? And I at some point you just have to go, it's probably likely, but you can't assume or always see it, because you will lose your fucking mind. You'll jump at every shadow. You know what I mean? I had to go through that where I'm like, okay, probably, like, I get asked, I'm like, but I can't think about that. Unless I can prove it, it doesn't matter because it's irrelevant. I'm going to keep going forward anyway. You're right, Charlie. We can't lose ourselves to that. It's hard.
You have to take the stance of who gives a shit. Like, I don't care. Yeah. I just know that someone is looking at your computer, like, right off the bat.
Well, you should still take precautions, though, as best you can.
Yeah, as best you can. But just assume that whatever you're looking up is already, being categorized. We're all on lists for years and years, people going all the way back to 9/11 Truth. I always assumed that I was on a list for decades now. So I just don't care. I'm not doing anything illegal, at least not yet, like until they, they change the laws or whatever. But in terms of, like, looking for information, I'm not doing anything illegal. So just go about your day. Like you said, you can lose your mind if you think like, oh, they're always looking at me. I'm like, yeah. That's just paranoia. But just go about as if people are already looking at what you're looking at and not give a shit. Pardon my French or Spanish.
I'd like to take the aspect of, will my memes make the Fed boy cry? That's watching me. That's what I try to go for.
You're trying to radicalize your Fed that's watching you.
Radicalize my Fed boy.
I felt that way. I was on my way to Acapulco, and the TSA guy was asking me, as I was making him get on his knees and do the search, he's like, "Where are you going?" Acapulco. business or pleasure? I go, actually business. He goes, what kind of business are you in? That you get to go to Acapulco. I go, I'm a writer. And I was just about to leave it at that. And I go, but I'm also emceeing the largest anarchist conference in the world. And he's on his knees. He looks up at me and he goes, that's awesome.
Oh, nice. I was like, I thought that
And
ushered you to the next
there
room.
was part of me that was like, I wanted to like stick my hand out and go, come with me, brother. We'll get you on this flight to freedom, you know? And that, but then
Let me take you from your knees. Lift you
but
up.
then there was the other part of me that he wasn't quite ready. I also kind of felt like I wanted to dunk on him so that he'd go home and quit his job, you know, quit that shit job at the TSA and go do something else because he was halfway there, you know. I kind of wanted to rip the Band-Aid off a little bit, but
I got to run, but I'm going to leave y'all with this one story. And this is actually some of you guys I'm sure watch and listen to No Agenda, but this is a No Agenda travel tip that Adam Curry put out, and it works 100% every time. I don't go through the body scanner ever. When I walk up to the front of the body scanner, I go, I can't lift my shoulder above my head like this.
Oh, good
And
call.
if you can't do this, you're unable to go through the body scanner because they need them both your arms like this. I say, I can't lift this arm up. They walk you through the metal detector and they swab your hands. I've never been searched, never got the body cavity searched, nothing. They swab your hands, they check it, boom, you're through.
Not
You
after
do
this
that
podcast.
every time. Not after this podcast.
Now they know.
There's at least 5 Fed boys who know what's going on, and they're going to type that into the matrix. But but these TSA people never question it. It's like some of them don't know about it, but then they talk to somebody. Oh yeah, he just goes through here.
Jeez, doesn't that just show you how fucking arbitrary it is, though? Right? Like
Absolutely.
it's just all theater.
Well, it is security theater, and I'm the actor who's got the bad shoulder. That's how I consider it.
exactly. You're playing your part.
Good
Rob, tell
advice,
everybody where they can find you.
Oh, okay. I'm back on X at Dews News, DEWS, NEWZ, and if you guys are into political puppetry, I'm about to start the 4th season of Grunions. Here's one of my little guys. They're my little.
Nice.
I do a little puppet show called Grunions, and it's very. You can watch it with your kids. My kids participated in it with me. My 2 youngest.
Keith knows a thing or two about puppets.
Yeah.
I'm in that realm also.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So puppets are fun. I enjoy doing the voices and putting it together. It's a lot of fun. But it gets tiresome to do. Like you go try to do a series, you get like 3 or 4 into it, and you're like, I have no more ideas for this season. And you have to try. I need 3 more shows. What do you do? But anyway, and then you can find me on Infowars until there's a hearing in early June. It was supposed to be in May. They moved it to June. Last year we were at this point where we thought we were getting shut down. I said, I think we're going to be here in a year, and we're still in the same building. But it's not going to be forever. I don't think I give us maybe 2 months after June. So sometime this summer we'll be out of that building and into different location. But it's not going to stop. It just might not be Infowars anymore. So that's sad. But anyway, it's been fun. I had a great time. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, yep. And that's it.
Let's wrap this baby up. Tease, where can people find you? Where can people get the new Derek Bros mini documentary?
Yeah, so I co-host AM Wake Up Wednesdays over with Steve Pekoinen, who is a member of the Independent Media Alliance, with Ryan Christian, who is a cameo in the most recent documentary that I put out, telling the life story of Derek Bros, who founded the Graders Reset, now rebranded the People's Reset, in order to try and help us all exit and build. And the idea being that I'm an independent documentary filmmaker telling different stories of wonderful individuals. One of them happens to be right there. That's Graham. He was the first of these mini documentaries, which are telling the broader story of the truth community. Those are available on conspiracysynergy.com. They're free for you. They're 100% alternative media, completely value for value. Check those out. They're amazing. I'm currently editing the one right now on Ryan Christian combined with the Union of the Unwanted. So I'm actually going to be right now compiling. I was earlier downloading a crap ton of episodes, and I'm going to be doing montage on that. Got interviews with Charlie with puppies, and I'm going to be visiting again soon to finish up Charlie's documentary. So it's an ongoing thing I'm going to be doing for the next few years. Check out conspiracysynergy.com to get really get close to the people who are doing this work the real way, and they're doing incredible work, and I'm happy to tell their stories. So that's where to find me.
Thank you, Tease. I can also confirm that there is a scene in the Union of the Unwanted mini documentary with me and Sam Tripoli sitting on a swing set together in Tennessee. outside in the rain, each of us with puppies on our laps, talking about conspiracies, which is going to be a trip when that comes out. Graham, what's going on with Grimerica?
Well, Darren's out there with Randall Carlson and the crews touring the Bonneville floodplains right now for a week. So that's going on. And we have a trip coming up in the Azores to look for Atlantis in November with Randall Carlson and all them. There's only like 1 or 2 tickets left. So
where can people go to get them?
Contacted the
Randall goes out in the field? Does Randall go out in the field?
Yeah, we
he
spend
does.
like a week with him. Like he'll do lectures and you just hang out with him for like a week. This one we're going to he's never been to the Azores, so this is like a first trip. But we were gonna hit like 3 different islands on the Azores and check it out. That's where he believes Atlantis was.
All right. Yeah.
And you can find all our other stuff at grimerica.ca. We've got audiobooks, all kinds of audiobooks, and 3 different podcasts and all that good stuff. So
Graham, where can people get tickets? Those last tickets to go out.
Contactedthecabin.com. And you can find that if you hit the events tab on our grimerica.ca as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Monica, what's happening?
Hey. Yeah, so I've got a few things. I'm a little distracted because my house, and I don't know if you can hear the construction, and there's just crazy things going on up here because of the fire. But I still been putting some interesting stuff up. I just put out a cognitive dissidence. I think that's out today on my show, The Monica Perez. Mike and T made a fabulous documentary of her voyage. It was really, really well done. I knew a couple of things I've seen. I'm like, that's Tease. Like, it's just really, really good stuff. So I have a show with those guys, and I'm wrapping up this discussion and reading of this book, Makers of the Modern Mind, which goes from basically Luther to Dewey and Freud and everybody in between. Very interesting. And then I have a couple of very cool shows coming up. Daniel Estelin, it was very fun talking to today. Really blew my mind. Like 1 hour of just like fire hose. Excellent. And some guy met from Twitter in Yemen and picked his brain about Yemen. And you're just not hearing the inside scoop on Yemen. So anyway, that's at the Monica Perez Show, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Chris Graves, how can people support you in this time of need?
I'm at C Graves Mass Guy. I have I have a link tree and everything. What
about PayPal?
Yeah, PayPal and Cash App. Just support my friends like Mr. Charlie Robinson, Monica Perez, Donald Jeffries, American Memory Hole. That's something I'm really proud of, helping him out with the better researcher, Peter Seakosh. He's great. And just check out What is Truth podcast with my good buddy Wheezy. He's been keeping my spirits up for the last few months. And I really, really am glad that you guys were on tonight and that I could be a part of it. You have no idea.
We're so glad to have you, Chris. It's our pleasure. Ryan, T-Lab.
Yes, sir. Well, it's good to be back tonight. But just before we, did this start at 6 p.m. or Central?
We started earlier. We started an hour early.
Okay.
I was late too. Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
I
was like, I didn't.
Same reason. Yeah.
It's not you. It's
got
us.
it wrong.
It's us. It's Ricky. Actually, it's his fault.
Thanks for the invite again. And, just as always, thelastamericanvagabond.com. I will be, I forget what the exact date is. This month, I'm going to be on with Tinfoil Hat with Sam again. And we'll see what else is coming up. Just other things coming up, general. Like I said, Tease is coming out with the doc about T-Lab. We have an IMA panel coming up on the 15th, I believe. I don't know, Charlie, I don't know if you're going to be there or not, but basically everyone's welcome to come from the IMA. It'll be about AI and like whether or not we're using research to investigate things or AI, kind of that conversation of how that's affecting the conversation. And other than that, yeah, just check out the podcast and everything else and support us and everyone here. Just support independent media, guys. Yep. Important time for it. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for being here. I want to send good thoughts, positive vibrations to David Knight, who is in the hospital right now. So never met David Knight, but Tony Arterburn, the great Tony Arterburn, fills in often for David, and so I've had a connection through that, and I respect his work, and hopefully he gets well, and we would love to have him on the show at some point. He would be a tremendous asset. Sam Tripoli could not be here tonight. Go to samtripoli.com. Go see him live. Go support live stand up. Go support all of this. If there's a podcast that you like out there, will you please rate it? Everybody should rate it. Do that dumb dance that we have to. We've been speaking about AI and all this, but we have to play this game where you've got to get 5 stars and you got to do all that stuff. And we hate to do it, but if we're forced to play it, we should play it right. So all of you people out there listening, whatever podcast you're listening to that you like, make sure you do that because it's such a small thing and it helps out a lot.
Unless you've been censored from all the mainstream platforms, just send me $1 on a alternative platform because my stars don't exist.
There you go. Yeah, it's stuff like that.
Badge of honor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Vote with your intention, with your dollars, and however you can. Or if you don't have that, if you have more time than money, then share the show for God's sake. It's so easy to do, and we really do appreciate it. Midnight Mike could not be here. Our Big Dumb Mouth OBDM podcast Wednesdays and Saturdays. It's the best podcast in the world. I still proclaim that. Ricky, what are you up to? What's going on with the Ripple Effect? Who do you have on? Coming up.
To look at my schedule, I'm so bad at that. I'd never really, but I've had some really good guests recently. John Stockton's been on for the second time, as you guys know, a big basketball fan.
Anti-vaxxer too.
Yeah, so he's awesome. He's been very outspoken. I mean, he's a Gonzaga legend, and during the COVID lockdowns, he wouldn't wear a mask at the games, so he, has a whole lawsuit with them, and it just, but one of the most modest, nicest people ever, and it is pretty amazing when you meet these, I guess celebrities or famous people, for lack of a better term, how down to earth some of them really are, and how a lot of them maybe publicly can't discuss these things, but in their private life, they're into a lot of the same topics we're into, and very intriguing. So that's always a blast. You can find all the links at the union, the union.unwanted.com, but the rippleeffectpodcast.com. And as I think we talked about a little bit, yes, nice shirt. Thank you for repping the shirt. Thank you, Tees. I have been reinstated on YouTube. Weirdly enough, in 2021, I got kicked off, as you guys know, having Dr. Pierre Corey on, Dr. Scott Jensen, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. All of them, Dr. Peter McCullough. And weirdly enough, those episodes still exist on YouTube. The Mickey Willis episodes, all the Del Bigtree episodes, all the Brooke Jackson, the Pfizer whistleblower. I don't get what's going on with YouTube with the censorship. Like I said, as you guys know, I got completely scraped in 2021. And then weirdly enough, just like a month ago or so, they just gave me the opportunity to appeal. I did, and hours later, everything was back. So it is kind of weird. So for the time being, it's there, but you can also find the show on band.video, BitChute, Rumble, Rockfin, and many other alternative platforms. And please support those alternative platforms, because when we were getting kicked off everywhere, and we, many of us still are, like Ryan, we needed those alternative platforms to get the information out there. And so, definitely support them. Obviously, many of us, if not all of us, are not in this for financial gain, because there is no financial gain. So if you can support, people listen, or shows that you listen to, please do. And I love this show. I mean, this show has been a huge help. I think, like Chris talked about, I mean, and we talked about a little bit, it was a huge help for me personally during COVID, just to talk to other people that are like, oh, okay, I'm not going crazy. This, this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And I think it's been a huge help. And I think that's why we've had so many amazing guests throughout the years. I mean, it's cool to, for Rob to bring up No Agenda. Adam Curry's been on, Chris brings up Wheezy. Wheezy's been on. There's very few people who get brought up that hasn't been on the show at some point, because, we built this community where we just, we don't burn any bridges. Whoever you are, as a researcher, if you're on our team, if you're fighting against the same people, you're on our team, and we're more than happy to bring you on the show and connect different tribes, and hopefully everybody gets along and realizes that we're on the same team, because there is a little bit of infighting in the alternative media community, more than I think ever lately. But I think this show has done some serious good in regards to kind of building bridges between communities and not burning them. So, but yeah, I think that's it from my my side.
Jason
Macro-
Burmis just texted me saying he wished he could be on today.
He-
He was
he's
like,
been
"All
on
right." He
too.
was listening, I guess, wherever he's at.
Fantastic.
So-
Macroaggressions.io is my website. You can go out there. Current interviews with 7Cs. Talk about technocracy. It's a good one. You might want to catch that. He's all in there. Next week I've got Beth Martins. Go check out activistpost.com. I'm the new owner of the 15-year running independent news website that was too dangerous for the mainstream and back in 2016 when they tried to kill it, but it's still alive. So go check out Activist Post and Natural Blaze. Ricky, you got anything else?
I think that's it. In 2 weeks, or we'll see everybody again, either at 6 or 7 p.m. Because apparently I'm screwing up everybody. Yeah, I just try to have my glass of wine a little earlier in the night. That's the whole time.
He's being a good guy. He's coaching and doing all that stuff.
I got one more factoid. John Stockton actually played more games than LeBron James,
And
and he didn't have nearly as long of a career in terms
yeah,
of years.
and he's still the all-time leading leader in
Assist leader.
and steals. So one
Yeah.
defensive stat and one offensive stat. And when I had him on, I'm like, hey, John, for people who are listening who don't know who you are, introduce yourself. He didn't bring up any of that and nothing.
Okay.
It was funny. I had him on with his, he has a great podcast called The Ultimate Assist that he just started. And with this guy, John, or Ken Rugger, who Green Bay Packer Hall of Famer. And me and Ken started laughing because we're like, John, we're like, hey, give a brief background. He's just like, yeah, I played basketball and love basketball and grew up. My dad owned a tavern, and yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the intro that he gave himself.
Dabbled.
Hey, Ricky, are you a fellow masshole, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I actually live pretty close to the Basketball Hall of Fame. I actually was just at it because my kids haven't gone to it in a while, and they have
Okay.
a little corner with all this John Stockton stuff. So I had my kids take a picture next to it, and I'd send it to John. I'm like, hey, John, we're thinking about you, because my kids think it was like the coolest thing ever that I got to. And I honestly thought it was the coolest thing ever. Speaking of all the amazing guests that have been on the show, I got to get John on, and maybe another OG, somebody that we have huge respect for. Maybe we can get Alex on here. I know that's been a dream of ours for a long time to get Alex on the show. I mean, I would have to mute everybody and just let.
I would have to be on and just get out of the chair and go, hey, look, it's on. Here it is. Sit down. And he would sit down and go. Probably without a shirt, too.
How nature intended it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
All right.
Who's obviously one of the co-hosts on the show, Sam Tripoli, has we've talked about trying to get Sam to work on that for us also. So people tune in. One of these days, Alex might just show up.
Never know. Hey, check out Sam's bee episode. That bee guy he had was really interesting. The guy who's making vortexes with magnets and capturing energy fields. Really interesting what this guy's done with bees and honey.
That sounds interesting.
Honey's one of my favorite things to eat. Good honey.
Check that out. Sam does so many episodes, and people will tell me about episodes. I'm like, I'm friends with Sam, and I keep missing. He does so many episodes. We're like, oh, did you hear this episode he did on? And I'm like, no. And he finds like the most interesting researchers. It's
the guy's a Canadian too. He's a very interesting Canadian kind of self-made guy, and doing some interesting stuff. It piqued my interest enough where I'm like, I'm gonna go find out more about that person, and that's rare. Usually, I get enough from the podcast, but I want to make my own magic honey.
Look at that organic plug for Sam Tripoli's show, huh? That was awesome.
Yeah,
It's already pretty magic in and of itself, really.
It is,
Honey.
but if you can make it better, I mean,
Yeah.
oh my God,
That's
it's like,
interesting.
what? Let's go.
the one night we don't have Marion on, too, to talk. We
Yeah,
could have talked
right.
about honey and
The
bees.
bee lady.
Jesus. All right, Ricky, let's land this thing.
Let's land this UFO.
Let's
And
land this flaming plane made by
See you
Boeing.
guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it. And
everyone.
hopefully we see you guys on the show again in the near future. Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Have a good